You've probably encountered people on the spectrum more than you realize. You just don't know it. Here are examples of characters on the spectrum navigating social settings.
Remember to smile at work while I say,
Welcome to Cinnabon. Would you like a Cinnabon?
but don't repeat the words too quickly and make it sound different each time.
Welcome to Cinnabon. Would you like a Cinnabon? Welcome to Cinnabon. Would you like a Cinnabon?
Place to another within the same galaxy on the same day.
You know, speaking of wormholes, what do you say we use one to teleport this conversation someplace a little more private?
That doesn't make any sense. Wormholes and teleportation are two different things.
What's your name?
Abed.
Abed. Robert.
Hey, Robert.
Abed, would you like to have gay sex with me?
No, thank you.
Wow. Okay, so what is wrong with you that you can sit here this whole time and never pick up on the fact that a man is hitting on you?
Oh, I actually did pick up on it after a while.
You actually... And?
I really like talking about Farscape.
Hi.
You waiting for someone?
No.
Can I buy you a drink?
No.
Okay.
Why'd you walk away? I just didn't want a drink.
Okay.
Wild or farmed?
I believe it's farmed.
Land-based or net pen?
Sorry?
Were they raised on land-based facilities or in net pens in the ocean?
Well, it's a fish, so I'm guessing the ocean.
Could you check?
Sure.
Thanks. Sorry.
It's okay.
You have to be careful with some of the farm shit.
So you just eat wild?
Yeah, mostly. But there's problems there, too. Some wild fish have tested positive for microplastics. Some wild salmon have tested positive for antidepressants.
I do have one question.
Yeah.
Why were you rude to me when we first met, then nicer to me the second time we met, and now you want to be my friend? Which time was it that you were pretending?
Hey everyone, my name is Julia and I am making a video about autism. It's something that I've made before, but I haven't touched on it for a while just because it's something that I'm still educating myself on. And I needed to do a lot of self-reflection in order to make this video. This video is about, the pros and cons of being autistic. This is all coming from my perspective. So even if I ever use like we terms or inclusive terms, I'm frankly just talking about myself. I cannot speak on behalf of an entire community. So please know that whatever I'm saying, it's not factual, it's just my opinion. And I have tried filming this several times and it didn't feel comfortable or natural for me. So I wanted to film it with a friend who I forced or bribed into helping me out. His name is Matt.
Hi, I'm here. You can see my hand.
Yeah.
Over here.
So, yeah, I mean, Matt is really cool for doing this for me and like just being a moral support. He's never done anything like this before. So I think that the best I could do is just, tell my truth. And if he were to have questions or would want me to expand on something or give input, I think that, he is welcome. Okay, so certain positives, I think if I were to explain the positives, it's kind of a mixture of positives of being autistic and certain positive aspects now that I know I'm autistic. So I think one of the positive aspects of being autistic is or at least knowing that I'm autistic is it kind of humbles me. I think knowing that I now have some idiosyncrasies, I can learn to be more patient with other people and be more open-minded. I think it makes me humble in the sense where I know on my end, because I have difficulties with being just really literal and taking people's words for taking what people say by heart rather than picking up on certain cues or maybe certain implications. having difficulty with micro expressions. So for instance, if someone is like smiling, I don't know if it's like very sincere or not. You know, there are certain things that like maybe on my end I'm not aware of, so I have to like be very mindful, and you know, I have to be willing to own up to the things that I can do better in order to make the people that I care about like happy. I'm not a savant by any means, but I think that now that I know that I'm autistic, I've been trying to find a good learning style for myself. So in school, like I technically went to a I've always done pretty well in school, but I don't think I really like learned a lot because it was all through passive learning, through memorization. But now that I know that I'm autistic, and if I needed to find a way to digest information, what I've learned is that I'm really good at creating like information architecture, or kind of building out a layout of information. So I might learn something on Crash Course, and because like they might go back and forth on certain things and I don't really see like how that information loops around, I'll try to make this huge map just to see where all the like how everything kind of connects together in order to see the whole picture. I have pretty good memory for the most part, where I can remember trivial things that probably don't matter to other people. So I mean, like with you, we haven't seen each other in a long time, but I remember the fact that like you had a father that lives in San Diego. At one point you were gonna do computer science.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was interested in something like that. But
yeah, for sure.
Stuff.
And then I still remember like the first time I met you, it was just like over oysters. And the first time we hung out, we went to the Irvine Spectrum, where we also hung out at the Urban Outfitters. And I know your crush on Emma Watson. You had a huge crush on Emma Watson. You also liked Emma Stone, I think.
Yeah.
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 Redheads. Yeah, I didn't even remember that stuff, but
yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
Gold star.
Good memory.
I have to say that I'm a very outgoing person. It has to do with somewhat of a lack of inhibition. So for instance, you know, any job opportunity I had that I was way underqualified for, I still got it anyways, because I would like show up to the company with my resume and like drop it off. And I think like doing that, I've been able to surpass so many people.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you have to, I guess in that kind of stuff, that's pretty cool. Because you don't really feel like, you know, you're being awkward or anything. You're just doing it because you want to do it, and you're not really thinking of how people perceive you in that sense.
I think,
right?
yeah, I would probably say that.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely a good quality, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's definitely just like not really, it's not heard of nowadays, I think. And that's what like at least makes me pretty confident. Like I'm always the one to kind of initiate, like when I'm meeting people, like to like initiate this, or if I like someone, I'm just gonna like, I don't really beat around the bush. I'll just tell them I like you, you know? Yeah. I mean, I guess maybe a certain weakness, not like a weakness towards me, but like a weakness in navigating society is like, you know, by being public that I'm autistic, it kind of also, there's a possibility it could limit like certain job opportunities. I mean, you could also say, well, you know, if those people don't accept you, then that's that. But then because people don't know much about autism, I think that they are so quick to pass judgment. And even though we have something called, I think it's the ADA, it's like the Disabilities Act, like people could just like Google me and like YouTube me and like find out I'm autistic and have a certain like assumption and just not bring me in for an interview. So there's always that. I think another thing that I struggle with was like, you know, at certain job places, any place that didn't have like a structured orientation, people or, you know, companies, especially startups, they associate orientation or, you know, proper training and accommodation as having your hand held, when some people truly need it. And even though I may not come off as autistic, like I do struggle with certain things and certain cues. And if there isn't like a structured way of navigating certain things, because every workplace is different, I'm kind of, I have a rocky foundation.
But I mean, that's not like a weakness on your part. I mean, that's just like society not being able to look at the bigger picture, or, you know, it's I can't really say I blame a lot of people for feeling that way because you just want to. If you're thinking about just a business sake for the business sake, like you want it to be as structured as possible and you want everything to be okay with the least failures, right? So that's why they do that kind of stuff. But obviously, like we were talking about, or like how I was talking about is, you can't let that define someone. So you have to see them for who they are. Yeah, it's a part of them. Yeah, it could lead to other stuff, but it doesn't necessarily make or break who that person is. So I think people should be judged on their qualities and their work ethics and stuff like that than how they are.
Yeah.
It's like you find that's really hard about being autistic.
Sometimes texting is really hard. There was like this one time, I mean, like if I were just to give a subtle example, I was like texting with a friend and he, the ... sign where, someone's texting.
Oh, yeah.
And then all of a sudden he was texting something and then he stopped. And a few minutes later, like I didn't get anything. So I responded, were you about to text something? And then, he sent this text. Like, I think he just like kind of knew and he found it like humorous and cute. So he was like, yeah, normally when like I see the dots, I just like ignore it and give people their space.
Yeah. Like, I mean,
yeah.
Do you feel like that's something that's like from your autism that you feel like that?
Go ahead.
Because I feel like that's a lot of people now.
Like you could say like, there's a difference between me, myself, and then, me happening to have autism. I think most people in that scenario probably wouldn't have said something, but I did anyways, not thinking that would, that was like an intrusion of boundaries, if that makes sense. I think another thing that maybe I struggle with, and it's just like an inherent fear, is like maybe finding like a partner that is kind of like a bit like that may not be right for me, or maybe like a little bit like self-serving, because I think in the past when I'm looking back at certain relationships, and even though like I don't want it to be one-sided, I have to say that they were not right in a sense where like they were easy to spot someone that can be easily naive or be taken advantage of. So like for instance, I mean like I'm gonna give like a very like innocent like example. I was like I was pretty young at the time, I think 18, and then like I met someone and they were telling me all of these things, and I look back and I'm like I really ate it up. Like they were telling me how they were a restaurant manager / actor, and they do golfing, and they're friends with like the owners that own Anki, the place in South Coast. Like, and like it was just like all these things, and this person would want phone conversations, but they would never meet up in person. And I'm like, what is going on? And then I kind of just like out of my own curiosity, I called the restaurant and I was like, hey, can you give me the list of the managers? And it was like all female. And like,
well,
yeah,
and that stuff, yeah, it's
hard. It's I mean, this is the thing. It was just like, this is the thing. The fact that I had to have like concrete facts rather than going with my gut, like, oh, this person is flaky and stuff. The fact that I had to go to that extent to get like facts and just like really see people for what they are, I think that is a struggle for me when I don't need to go to that extent to prove a point, or to like to have a clarity of what's going on, because I think maybe in my world, like I just feel like I have to have that in order to have some sort of closure, and even when I found out and like I told them about it, they were just like, oh, you're I think you're just like, this is where like things are getting weird because that's a very immature thing for you to do. And then they were like, yeah, and then they were like, I was a waiter and now I'm a manager. And it was like those sending texts, and it's like, it's gaslighting, and it's like, and I had to like kind of really like tell myself like, this is what's real, this is what's real, this is what's real. I think another thing that I had to learn is just like, learning what or what not to take personally, for sure. Like, for instance, I told you like recently there was like a thing going on where like info was just withheld for me. There was like a huge miscommunication, and I ended up like not being on good terms with like two people. And like on my end, I could definitely see where like the errors in my ways and try to like, like make it right and for both parties, and obviously that's all I could do. But I think like I also just feel like it's like because of that it was just super hurtful. I think a good faithful friend would be someone to like that would want to address things to you directly, even though it would be upsetting because they care about you and they want to make things right. But for someone to kind of go and say something else without like understanding that perspective, it led to a ripple effect where another person like took this information, knowing that they withheld something, and kind of like, assassinate someone's character. And like and it's really painful when like, when people know that you're autistic and they don't take into consideration like the fact that, hey, like, like you're making assumptions and you're not hearing my story, that your truth is the only truth. And the fact that like maybe I'm playing the autism card, or maybe I'm just like a fallible person and no one else is fallible. I think the most painful, and I think for someone to do that is like it's kind of selfish, to be honest. And I think the most painful thing that I heard from that was like, there are things that you should have picked up without me having to tell you. I think on my end, like I kind of don't understand the threshold of other people's emotions, so I might like pick at it, and I don't know how they respond, because the way that I respond, I'm like I address things so directly head on, where people are like, hey,
back off a little bit.
back off a little bit.
It seems like most of the things, or most of your encounters where like people are having problems or you're having problems, is because the other person is not really telling you what they want, by whether their excuse is like, oh, they're just trying to make sure that not to hurt you or hurt your feelings, or they're not really good with confrontation, or they don't, they want to keep it double-ended, So I mean,
what do you mean by double-ended?
They want to keep their options open, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing, and I think like that has happened in the past where people keep things vague to kind of like have their cake and eat it too, and it's really annoying.
People don't like to deal with absolutes because they don't want to lose out on something that they could potentially miss or they could potentially have.
Yeah.
So they don't want to like that's when you hear people talk and it's kind of wishy-washy, or it's like it's not very concise or to the point, like how you like to talk is very direct and very to the point. So once you make your opinion on something, it's pretty firm that like you feel this way and you don't want the other way. But whereas other people, for instance, they have it open-ended where like, oh, I'll agree with you on this, but I don't, or I'll disagree with you kind of. So it keeps it open-ended, so you just have that possibility of like, oh, it's okay on both ends,
Yeah.
People just don't like dealing with absolutes in that sense.
Yeah, and I think it's on me to kind of like, I mean, I feel like everyone has a responsibility. Like if you have an idiosyncrasy, like you owe it to yourself to kind of work on it. And I think it's like when you consistently like pick up that someone isn't being direct about certain things, it's like it has nothing to do with me or the other person, but it's just best to cut your losses.
If they're actually wrong, then you don't have to cater to them in a sense, or that social norm of like, oh, I must have done something wrong. Like, if they're blatantly wrong, they're wrong, right? If this person betrayed you and they're wrong, you don't need to look so deep into it where you're just like, oh, is it my fault? I could have done something, or they said this, so I should have listened. Like whatever excuse they want to say that like, oh, I only did this because you were like this, or you should have picked up on this or on that, whatever. It's not right, like in the end, like it doesn't excuse what they did was bad, and just because you did something and let's say it's a little bit of your fault, it doesn't mean that like whatever they did was excusable.
Yeah, for sure. And I think going through that event, it kind of like at one point I felt very discouraged, and like I was like, well, how did this happen? Like my life is a video game, I'm choosing all the wrong turns and whatnot. But I think like from doing that, it kind of like worked me back to this thing where someone told me like there's so many reasons why I'm this way to you. And that was like a relationship that like was also that blindsided me, where it was like really good. It was like the emotional high, and all of a sudden it's like that honeymoon phase, and then there was no like medium phase, it was like, and you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
We talked about it, but like, you know, I confronted this, I talked to this person, I addressed it, and I told them like, okay, these are probably the things that I didn't understand. You said this thing, I don't know what you meant by it, but I'm willing to listen to you.
Yeah,
and
that's how most relationship is. You know,
Yeah.
you're never always gonna be agreed. You're not always gonna know what this person is thinking. You're not gonna
Yeah.
always know
Yeah.
what they're trying to say. So it's good that you communicated with this person, and I'm glad this worked out for you. And
Yeah.
in a sense, reflecting on this relationship and your other relationship where you had a problem with, if it was only treated out like an adult, where it's out in the open, you know, like, oh,
Yeah.
this is misjudgment, or you know, like whatever she did, you know, you could talk about it,
Yeah.
but it wasn't handled that way. So if you look at both sides, you know, this is how it should have been handled, and this is how it shouldn't.
Yeah, for sure. And just going back to, you know, this person that we're talking about now, it's just like the fact that this person was just so open and like saying, you know, this is like how I grew up, and this is like what I know, and this was my truth. And to understand that, like what he said, like, you know, there's many reasons why I'm like this way to you. It didn't really have much to do with me when I thought it had much to do with me. And I think because I'm autistic now, I have to like, you know, it's a struggle and a strength, like just understanding, like, you know, I don't have to be hard on myself whenever something goes wrong, as long as I'm doing my best, and just being able to communicate, you know, what my needs are, and like kind of work on getting to that place. That's like the best that I can do, you know.
I mean, I guess like from watching your other videos, I mean, I can tell like obviously I think anything you can turn anything into a strength or into a weakness depending on how you look at it, you know.
Yeah.
Like for instance, like when you said that like you wouldn't be able to take social cues, like it could be a positive in the sense, you know, like maybe someone is trying to be nasty to you, you know, but you just can't pick it up, so you know you don't get bothered by it, and then they get more bothered by it themselves.
I think being autistic kind of adds a layer of that like weird gray area, you know. I mean, that's just me. There's the layer of gray area is like what makes it kind of difficult to navigate, and like that's why reading cues is so important. And I think a lot of people take for granted the things that people with autism cannot pick up. And it's not that I don't want to learn and I'm willing to learn. I just have to put more effort into it than most people.
Oh, I see.
Thanks for doing this with me today.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Okay.
You know, I've always like thought-provoking conversations, you know. I don't really talk to a lot of people about this except like
Yeah.
a few people, you know.
Can I have a hug?
Yeah, of course.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Oh my gosh, let's get food. I haven't eaten since breakfast.
Okay, yeah, let me get food.
Yeah. Okay.
Are you hot? This is hot.
The lights. Maybe. No, it's fine. That's why I turned up the AC. All right. Well, anyways, this was our rant about, you know, certain my personal strengths and weaknesses. But yeah, I'm hungry now. So thanks for watching.
Bye.
Bye.